That's what I want to see. I didn't see them. I'm the only person who ever speaks them. I go, what do I see by now? There was some real issues there. And I thought, you know, to be aware of that report card, I told Manny, I didn't know you were using this book, but it's really good for research. And it's called Open Doors by Dr. Trudy.
Is it tacky that I'm eating a salad? I'm so hungry. Yeah. I just don't want to. I'm so hungry. Like my blood sugar's super low. I have to eat.
Get an email.
Megan, your butt is on live. The camera's right there. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I didn't know if
Cash on you?
you.
You have cash on you? You have some?
Here.
Take 20.
Okay. Hey, Megan. What if I send you guys to your phone that QR code? You can go around and have people scan it.
Sure, send it to them.
Okay. Tracy, if I send you and Andy the QR code, then you can go around and have people scan it so they can sign in.
She said something about it.
So if I send you the QR code, then you go around and like have people scan your phone, and then it'll go right to the website where they have to sign in. So I can have their email. I forgot the okay.
Are you gonna send it on Signal or?
Yeah. Hold on, I gotta find out even where I put it. I can't remember. Oh my gosh, I'm a mess.
Sorry.
That was me.
Oh.
That's okay. No problem. Okay, so I'm gonna send it like that. Okay. And then they can just scan it on they open their camera and they scan it and they go to the website and fill it out. That's it. Easy peasy. Thank you.
Do you want them to sign it on a sheet of paper if they don't have a cell phone?
No, I don't have one. You might have to make the QR code bigger. No? Here, let me see. Let me try it on my phone. No? Let me scan it and see if it
It might be like inlets, maybe.
Oh, I don't know.
Money Chicago.
You know, I think on a Tracy, on a Where's Robin? Where's Robin? You're not coming? Oh. Yeah.
I haven't seen her. Andy's struggling. I'm gonna let Andy know.
You got it. How are you?
Okay, how you doing?
Good.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Is there anybody here that's from like two events here in National City or Hero Beach, that area?
Coronado. That's not south enough. Coronado.
Yeah, can I kind of
No.
It's further, too much further east.
Nope.
or-
We're mostly just East County for families. But yeah, I don't think so. I don't know of anybody at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see anybody.
Somebody might
Zach says he doesn't need no QR code.
What?
Megan's husband Zach says he doesn't need no stinking QR code.
What? Oh.
No, we're from East I grew up in National City. We're on your side. You know, this is actually more on the East County school district, so maybe not a lot of South County people. Santee, La Mesa,
Lakeside.
Lakeside, and not Alpine, but Cajon Valley.
Yeah, Alpine.
Yeah, so we were the ones that sent it out, so it didn't not have to trickle down, but that's a good point to make sure that people know that this is really important to them. Anybody. We should have invited. Well, so are you? That in terms of growing what it takes to be a school board member, that's pretty much information that a lot of parents and families want to know. And it's not really, that's a technical. Because it is a big. And Deborah, I'm serious about campaigning. Do you have a campaign manager already?
Well, no, does Dan count? Well,
Have you tossed your hand?
I have- no, I have to wait until the 30th.
But even now, you can go in
Yeah.
with family.
But they don't want, so Andrew doesn't. Want you to wait? I don't know. I'm gonna let them kind of decide what they want to do, and then I'll just say okay. Well, 3 of the same people, and then me, the Lakeside. I don't know if anybody else does. I mean, he has a couple people that were interested, but. I can send you the link.
Right there.
Do you want me to get a paper?
I can send you like a link that they can that
They're
maybe you
having
can.
difficult time. There's one they didn't have any technology, so doesn't believe in it.
Oh.
You know, he's damn conservative.
I mean, since she probably doesn't have an email, so that's all I want.
I didn't do it.
Yes, you did, Dan.
I didn't. Word of God. Well, maybe I did.
Megan, what is that tattoo on the back? Louder.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you guys for coming. We want to get started. I think we're running a little bit late, and we want enough time for questions and discussion. This is our second town hall, our first one, December 1st. We had a lot of questions and really good discussions. We want to make sure we have enough time. So I'm Megan Dunn. I'm a parent of two little girls. My oldest is at Cajon Valley, and she was in La Mesa Spring Valley, and we moved right before COVID from La Mesa to El Cajon. And so, long story, we stayed at La Mesa, and then with COVID, we realized Cajon Valley's open. Why? This is crazy. Why are we at the school we're supposed to be at? So we moved over there and kind of wanted to bring a lot of the lessons that we learned from some of the issues in La Mesa. Andy was with us. Andy's here tonight. She's California Teacher of the Year. And her husband was District Teacher of the Year, so we're really happy to have her. Amy Reichert helped us a lot with the issues in La Mesa. So there was a lot of lessons learned, a big learning curve for a lot of us to kind of catch up to speed, especially in the middle of COVID with shutdowns and some recalls that we tried to attempt to. Got over to Cajon Valley, realized there was some issues over there too, that, there's a lot of room for improvement. And some of my board and our superintendent are here tonight, so I'm really happy that they're here. When we were in La Mesa, we started talking to Jenny Merrifield, who started the Parent Association in North County, and just realized that she was a wealth of knowledge and really supportive of parents and wanting to empower parents and learn how school boards work and the whole political aspect of it. And it's been awesome to have her on our side and really kind of with us along the way. So in East County, we realized we were all doing a lot of the same work. We had Lakeside, Jennifer in Lakeside, and Tracy in Santee, and Amy in La Mesa, and we should all be united front. We should all be working together and helping each other. So that's kind of how this all started. We've been doing this about 2 years now. We're trying really hard to pace ourselves, right? It's really easy to burn out with all the issues. Obviously, mandates are very important, but that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. And 2022 elections are very important to us, and really making change locally is what's really important to us. And maybe that means keeping incumbent school board members too. If they're listening to us and, respecting where we're coming from as parents, then that's really important too. We're open to that. We're a pretty inclusive group. We want to work with everybody in East County. We are bipartisan. Jenny, unfortunately, can't be here tonight. She is sick, like many people right now. But Barry's going to help fill in for her and some of her talking points tonight. And she's very passionate about this being bipartisan. even though, the majority of us are registered a certain way when we vote. And you can probably guess what that is, but we try to be inclusive and open to working with everybody as long as we all have the same goals, right? And the same values and the same mission for our kids. So I think that's pretty much it. We had some big announcements today that Jenny was going to make about kind of the strategy moving into 2022 elections, but I think Barry's going to cover that. So we're really grateful to have Barry Jantz here. He was the Mesa City Council recently retired CEO of Grossmont Healthcare. Really excited to have Coronado Mayor Richard Bailey, who's running for Congress.
Yes.
Yay! And we know, with the redistricting maps, that's a whole interesting thing too. That's a whole separate town hall topic, but.
No, we were gonna do that just tonight.
Yeah, and then we have Amy Rucker from Reopen San Diego. I'm really excited to have her. She might have some announcements for us tonight. And hopefully she can talk about some of the work we did with La Mesa too. So with that, I'm gonna give it over to Barry.
Okay. Should I drag this over there or?
That's as far as it'll go.
I think we'll decide whether, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Amy, I think probably has a very quiet voice.
No, she doesn't.
Amy, you understand that you're supposed to be at the dice, not at the bar, right?
There goes our campaign.
You're on.
Cheers,
Amy's on the panel. She,
It's like,
listen, if you can serve her over here, she's gonna be fine, all right?
it's Diet Coke, I promise.
With what?
We don't judge. That's very important.
Okay, so, I think you heard, you got the sense that, the panel changed a little bit in the last few days. Jenny was supposed to be on the panel, and she's not doing so well, and she was also gonna have someone here that was gonna help with the political side, who apparently is not feeling well either. I think she was gonna speak. But Amy has decided to fill in, and I called the mayor today, because I was like thinking, okay, if he fails, Amy and I are gonna sit there and go, so, tell me about, like film school or something. So anyway, we appreciate you being here. We're gonna move ahead, but, listen, it was important, Ginny wanted to get some comments across, so we were trying to connect her, but the technology, so I'm gonna read this.
The technology worked. She just feels really bad.
Nobody wants to be
For
on
whatever,
camera.
I don't wanna violate HIPAA and like go into great detail.
I will.
All right, so this is from Ginny Merrifield. It is with great regret that I cannot be with you in person tonight. The panel's topic is so important, in case you haven't heard this, so you know what you're talking about. Empowering this community to take back local control of your school district. The Parent Association, Inc., was founded just a year ago by 14 parents in 6 North County school districts. We are now a statewide, bipartisan 501c3 organization of parent groups in over 100 districts in the state. We had a short-term objective of reopening our schools, which we accomplished by successfully suing Governor Newsom over his unconstitutional rules that prevented many schools from reopening. Our mission now is to empower parents to be effective advocates for all children in public schools. We are in this for the long haul. And I think we're going to focus on that a little bit tonight, too. Long-term school closures last year made it painfully clear that parents have lost all say in how their children are educated. That was never the intent of public education, and now we need to overcome powerful special interests to regain our income. This is not a trivial undertaking. The CTA, everybody know what the CTA stands for?
Yes.
Does anybody not know what the CTA stands for? Yes. The California Teachers Association receives almost $500 million in teacher payroll deductions every year. That sounds like they're so funded, they don't have to go out and fundraise. Wow. This represents a tremendous amount of money that they use to lobby and support. And she did say, earlier she said it's bipartisan, but she's saying here, support liberal Democratic candidates for every single legislative office in California and for many school district trustee races. If we have any hope of reclaiming local control and parent influence over the next several election cycles, we must win a majority of school board trustee seats in every school district. This is a David and Goliath story in the making. To that end, I am very pleased to announce tonight that we have launched the Parent Advocacy Center for Public Schools, a 501c4 nonprofit bipartisan organization dedicated to identifying, training, supporting, and funding qualified candidates for school boards in California. We have a team of professional campaign strategists led by Amy Fawcett, former Chief of Staff to Kevin Faulconer, to help us provide professional, efficient, cost-effective support for your community campaign team. Amy was the other person who was going to be here tonight to announce this, but you'll see her, if you're gonna get involved and you wanna do some training, you're gonna see her in the future. Okay, we'll guide each campaign team with a weekly call, so you don't make the typical mistakes of a first-time candidate.
Once upon a time.
Okay. Our goal is to win school board trustee seats with candidates who will put the needs of students and their families first and be responsive to the needs of the community. This program is designed to do just that. I hope the discussion tonight provides some insight into the importance of community engagement in any school board race and inspires you to become involved. If you remember only one thing tonight, it is this: no one person can win an election. It takes a community of volunteers to get behind a single candidate. The candidate is the tip of the spear, but you are the force behind their win. Tonight's town hall theme is to empower you to be part of this campaign to take back our schools. So take out your phones. She really scripted me. Pause. It says in if you know someone who would be a great candidate, or you are interested in being a candidate or being part of the campaign for a candidate in your district, please open a text. Take it down. This is why she asked for you to open your phones and why maybe I was pausing for a bit. Please open a text to 844. We'll give it to you again later. 844-403-2228. And type WIN 2022. WIN 2022. The phone number is 844-403-2228. And then you type WIN 2022. We'll be in touch with you ASAP. Beth, Ginny Muirfield, Executive Director. So great. I hope I did her comments justice. We will move ahead. I think these two have been introduced. So you got elected as mayor when you were 30?
Yeah, 2016.
So when I first ran in La Mesa, I was 30 when I announced. I was 31 when I got elected. That was only city council level.
Just a few years ago.
Yeah, you know. Anyway, some other folks here I want to make sure we mention. I think Jill Bartow from the Cajon Valley School District was here. I think she had to leave. We have also from Cajon Valley, we have Jim Miller. Jim Miller from the Cajon Valley. We have the superintendent there, David Michelle. David. Looking very casual. I love it. We have Kyle Herman, who is on the, as I call it, the Valle de Oro Community Plan Group.
You learned how to speak
And I think Kyle may be thinking about this, but we won't like take it away from her. I won't take it away. But I think he's thinking about maybe schools or something. Let's see. Phil Ortiz, Councilman Phil Ortiz. And then as I looked over at Jim Miller, I saw another friend over there by the name of Senator Brian Jones. Yeah. So I talked to your staff earlier, and they said you were going to make it.
Well, I can say hi real briefly. I gotta go.
Okay. Can we maybe? Okay.
Barry, you don't
You
just
get-
yeah. I just sent a text, right?
You get 30 seconds.
That's all I need. I just want to say hello, everybody. I'm actually on a plane 4 times this week, so I'm flying back from Sacramento today, back up to Sacramento tomorrow, and back home again on Friday. So I just want to, Jim did text me personally, and so I just want to say, let's go get them.
Yeah.
It's so bad in California right now that I had a Democrat senator colleague today tell me I have to win in November because we don't need any more Democrats in Sacramento.
Who was it?
Democrat call.
Who was it?
No, I can't say that. There's no greater force in politics than a group of ticked off moms.
Yep.
That's right. The
And
mama
I don't know,
lions.
how many of you are familiar with what happened at Foothills Christian Preschool? That wasn't by accident. What happened? Now, I had very productive and positive conversations with the director of DSS. So everybody that's in this licensing scheme works for this lady in Sacramento that I spoke to in November, and we were moving in a positive direction. And in my opinion, she's got a rogue agent in her department that came in with an agenda to go after this particular preschool on purpose. And this isn't the only one that's in this person's sights. This is true throughout all CTA. Doesn't matter how many good people are in these organizations or in these departments, it only takes one bad one to irritate a bunch of moms, right? And so in November, we're gonna have a great opportunity to take over, I believe, a bunch of these local school boards. And it's all starting here tonight. You guys are on the tip of the spear, and I'm committed to help you once we target and figure out what seats we're going after, where we're going after them, anywhere in San Diego County, I will back you up. So let's go get them. I have to go. I can sign autographs. I can't take it. I mean, if there's a one or two questions, I'm happy to answer, but
What's your campaign website?
Mine,
Yes.
electbrianjones.com.
Your staff is awesome.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
That wasn't a question, I'm sorry.
All right, see y'all later.
Thank you, Brian.
Sorry. I wish. No, I'm still driving, so I just wanted to drop in and say hi and let you know you guys,
We appreciate you stopping by.
you guys have support.
So, he said there's no one more powerful than a group of ticked off moms, right? As far as I'm concerned, there's no one more powerful than one ticked off mom if you. And by the way, that speaks for girlfriends too. He's got to leave at 7:40. He told me he's got to be out of here at 7:40 because it would be really good for his schedule, and he said, and for his relationship.
Yes.
We're gonna do that, but so we're gonna move ahead very quickly. So what I'd like we're gonna do opening statements, but I want to make sure there's enough time for Q&A, and especially Q&A before you have to leave. Then you and I will take the rest of it. So why don't you how about like a 1 minute, 1.5 minute opening statement, whatever you want to say. Ladies first. Sure.
Yeah.
Is that
Okay.
sexy?
No, that's very sexist.
Okay,
Good.
share those. Okay, I'm a TikTok mom. That's my origin story. I think as I look around the room, TikTok moms, TikTok dads, right?
And grandmas.
And grandmas, yes, and
Yes.
teachers of the year, yes.
Grandmas.
Oh, and by the way, thank you, Amy, thank you, Tracy, thank you, Megan, thank you, Andy, thank you, Jennifer, for doing this. You guys are the powerhouse team behind all of this. TikTok moms all right here. Shout out to the TikTok moms. Well, for me, and maybe for a lot of us, when our kids first had to be home, right? That was really, really hard, right? I remember at the time, I actually worked full time, my husband works full time. I can remember my son being on Zoom, I was on Zoom, and my husband was on Zoom. And it caused so much stress and anxiety. And then it just wore on and on and on. And so I know I'm just a minute and a half, and I'll keep it to a minute and a half, but I'm with Reopen San Diego. And we literally are a grassroots group. We started on the lawn at Balboa Park. We were just like a bunch of moms and dads. We just wanted a safe place for our kids to play. They hadn't even seen other kids in months because they've been trapped on screens. And finally, it just got to the point where it was open, shut, with no hope of schools reopening. But we finally realized we have to do something, we just don't know what. So
I'm here just to encourage everybody, and I think I hugged everybody in the room because I think I know just about everybody in this room because everybody in this room has been in this fight too. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to meet a lot of new faces tonight. So for those of you that I haven't met, Richard Bailey. I've had the honor of representing Coronado for the last 9 years, the first 4 years as a council member, the last 5 years as mayor. Barry made the comment that this upcoming election cycle really is a story of David versus Goliath. The good news is that David wins. David wins, right? Politics, you will come to find out, if you haven't already realized this, politics is a team sport. It is a team sport. I'm honored to be on this team with all of you. There is a role for every single one of us to play in this upcoming election cycle, whether it's as a candidate, a volunteer, a donor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So looking forward to those discussions tonight.
Excellent. Thank you. I love being a moderator because to me it means all I'm doing is directing traffic, right? And I don't have to answer any tough questions. But because of illnesses, I think I volunteered myself today to be a panelist as well, so that's fine. Just real briefly, when I ran, when I was 30, it was 1990. Okay, that was in La Mesa. La Mesa is different today than it was back then. In fact, I remember the numbers. The percentages I don't remember. I just remember the numbers. There were about, I can't remember the number of registered voters, but I remember it was about 16,000 Republicans registered in La Mesa, and it was about 14,000 Democrats. And there were quite a few independents or declined states. There were minor parties, of course. And I don't remember, but it was the number was pretty high on declined states. It still is very high. It's higher than that. But at that time, the declined estates in La Mesa probably swang very conservative. Okay, well, the numbers don't look like that anymore. In fact, there's more Democrats than Republicans. And the declined estates are probably higher than Republicans. If I looked, I don't know. I don't remember looking. But I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those declined estates now swing more liberal. All right. But there are some core issues that a lot of people agree on. So the example we just had in La Mesa, which we can get into more detail, was Laura Lofia, who won in a special election. She did not win because she was Republican in those numbers. She won because she was willing to step out on an issue that crossed party lines, and that was on vehicle mileage tax. This is an issue that he's very familiar with. And of course, last night, the first success, something she campaigned on, was the person who represented La Mesa at Sanday, who did not come and ask the council, well, how should I vote? As if he was voting there for himself instead of the council's majority opinion. Was removed from Sanday last night.
Yay. It's good for the nation.
I guess my overall message and what I want to kind of focus on a little bit tonight is, not all of these elections. I know there's a ton of Republicans in the room. I'm one. I don't know what you are, I'm guessing. But we don't win all these elections through just party. Party's an essential element, and I think it's important. You probably want to be in line with a party because you want that endorsement. But that doesn't mean you can only go after those votes. You have to go after others. So I'm going to leave it at that and say, hey, Amy, something you've been involved in now heavily for 2 years. You talked about it. Do you have some examples of where these issues cross party lines? Is that a softball question or what?
Okay, so I'll tell a story.
Yes,
So-
stand up.
Okay,
I will sit
so-
down. I'm the moderator.
Megan was there and Andy was there, and we actually did a rally at La Mesa Spring Valley Schools
By the district office.
at the district office. And just to give you an example of how it crossed party lines was, here we're standing there, bunch of parents representing every different walk of life, political spectrum, and then there's this lady and she's walking her dog, right? As we're standing there during the rally, and she starts shouting. Remember when she started shouting? And I'm like, and then she said, reopening schools is not racist. And she just happened to be a Black woman. And she was saying, it's not racist to reopen schools. Black kids deserve an education just as much as white kids do. And what happened was that reopening schools became an issue not only about politics, but about race. Because there were allegations at the time that anybody who wanted to reopen schools was racist, right? I was actually called a Nazi in a blog by a failed San Diego City Councilwoman, right, candidate. And I literally got her number because I'm a licensed private investigator in the state of California. And, oh, that's right.
We could be friends.
You called me a Nazi, and I just want to let you know that my 79-year-old Jewish mother would be very shocked about that. As well as the rabbi that bat mitzvahed me in 1983. So anyway, you're all here. You've all spoken out and been strong, and you've had pushback, and people will accuse you of it being a partisan issue. But the bottom line is, it's about our kids. Amen.
Same sentiment of a question. Sure.
The bad news is that politics often tends to be partisan in nature. And the bad news associated with that for us here in California is that there's a lot fewer Republicans than Democrats. The good news, though, is this. On an issue-by-issue basis, most people agree, regardless if you are a Republican or a Democrat. For example, when I look at the 2020 election cycle, here in the state of California, where Democrats outnumber Republicans 2-1, when you look at what happened for all of our partisan office holders, state house, state senate, Congress, up and down the state, Republicans lost, and lost pretty badly. Trump lost terribly in California. But when you look at it on an issue-by-issue basis, whether it was rent control, affirmative action, property tax increase, the Uber Lyft initiative, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we, the center right, won that. So what does that tell you? That tells you that although a political party might not be held in very high regards by the majority of the state of California, on an issue-by-issue basis, we pretty much are in agreement. And so coming full circle back to like school board issues, the majority of parents are in agreement. The majority of parents want their children in school receiving an education. The majority of parents are in agreement that when their children are in school receiving an education, that education actually prepares them for a real world career and not just spends the entire curriculum talking about how terrible America is. So these are things that most people are in agreement on, regardless of party affiliation. So that's something that gives me hope. I think that's something that should give all of us hope coming in this next cycle.
I use the example of Laura Lofian of okay, is she a great person? Absolutely. Well, did she get elected because she was a great person? Because she was the best looking candidate? Because she, again, it's issues. It was issues. She was catapulted to victory because she was the only one that was willing to stand up on an issue that was on everybody's mind, regardless of partisanship, regardless of party. So I think VMT, the vehicle mileage tax, I think that's one that we've seen lately. That's probably okay. Are there going to be more Republicans opposed to that than Democrats? Yeah. Are there going to be any Democrats opposed to it? Yeah. Are there going to be a lot of Dakota state voters that are very opposed to it because it's the nature of the beast? Absolutely. There are any other examples that you can think of? When you ran, I mean, look at this guy. He's a beautiful man. I'm happily married to a woman, but I can go out later. I'm happily married to a woman, but he's still a beautiful man. Okay, but he didn't just get elected because of what. So I'm guessing you did some coalition building. You did some stuff with this guy. This guy who's your campaign. Brad Gribble over here is a great campaign manager, campaign coordinator. Brad. I'm thinking you probably did some stuff to reach out to other than the vote. So give us some examples, because these people want to know how to run for school.
Yeah. So I've given a lot of thought to this over the years. You've all heard the term political science, right? The more you look into political science, the more you will find that there's not actually been real science in politics.
Yeah.
It's really tough to run a controlled experiment to see what works in the real world, what actually turns voters out, and what actually turns voters out for candidate A versus candidate B. It's nearly impossible to do that. So candidates and their teams are kind of left to try to figure out as they go. And there's general rules of thumb. There's considered to be best practices, of course, but you kind of figure out for yourself. That's something I wanted to just let all of you know. If you're thinking about running for office yourself, you are going to receive a lot of advice, a lot of unsolicited advice. At the end of the day, it is just your name on the ballot. You are the only one that has to live with the results the day after the election. Like all of your supporters, win or lose, are going to feel a certain way, but your name is on that ballot. So if anyone gives you a particular piece of advice that doesn't quite sit well with you, you're like, I just don't really buy that. Run it by your campaign team, right? Run it by your close people before you decide to move forward with that. Because if you move forward with that piece of campaign advice you don't really believe will help you and you end up losing the election, you're going to be blaming yourself for that. But if you move forward and conduct your campaign in a way that you feel proud of, that really makes sense to you, and you lose, well, you can sleep with yourself at night. A few points I want to make. Does anyone know the only determining factor for who wins the election? Is it endorsements? Is it money raised? Is it the number of doors knocked? Is it the number of mailers sent out? Does anyone know the determining factor?
Yeah.
Money raised?
Bingo. It's whoever gets the most votes. And it is really easy as a candidate, I'm guilty of this myself from time to time, it is really easy as a candidate to kind of get wrapped around the axle, and you find yourself viewing Facebook posts and Facebook comments. I can't believe he said that or she said that. And it just totally takes your eye off the ball. And wait a second, my only job as a candidate is to get more votes from the other person. It sounds so simple, but it's very, very easy to lose sight of that. The second question you should be asking yourselves is, well, what is the biggest determining factor for whether or not someone is going to check the box next to my name? And the biggest determining factor, hands down, tends to be name identification. So if a voter has heard of your name and they haven't heard of the other candidate's name, they're probably going to vote for you. And if they've heard of your name and they have a bad impression of you, but they haven't heard the other candidate's name, they're probably still going to vote for you. That's just kind of human nature. You do tend to find when you poll certain races throughout the country that if candidate A has high name ID and high unfavorability, but candidate B has no name ID, candidate A will win. That just tends to be what we see happen. I would encourage you all, as you're considering how to increase your name identification, think of it in terms of how do I build a relationship? The candidate that builds the closest relationship with the most number of voters wins the election. If you have a husband or a wife, chances are you have a really close relationship. Chances are that significant other is going to vote for you. If you have a best friend that lives in the district, you guys have a close relationship, chances are that best friend is going to vote for you. Your neighbor, probably going to vote for you. The soccer mom and dad at your AYSO team, probably going to vote for you. But as you get further and further away from your significant other, and that relationship becomes weaker and weaker and weaker, the likelihood of them voting for you becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's the job of the candidate, and that's the job of the campaign team, to figure out, of our whole pool of voters that are going to cast a ballot in this upcoming cycle, how do we build the deepest relationship possible with all of them, so that they feel confident that we share the same issues, that we share similar values, regardless of party affiliation, so that they check the box next to your name.
We haven't run for office yet. Well, I'm not making an announcement, but anything else? So, I mean, you've been involved now close to 2 years in this reopen effort. You were involved in a controversial effort over a controversial person in Mesa Springwood. Anything else you learned from this process that could apply to working, across the board, not just with conservatives, Republicans, anything else?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. First of all, how many people are thinking about running for office? Raise your hand. Amy? Kyle? All right, Kristen?
Jennifer?
Nice.
Jennifer?
Jim, are you thinking about it?
I don't have to for much reason.
Okay, but you're thinking about it.
I'll think about it later.
Anybody else think about running for office? Awesome, Jennifer. Very cool. All right. So basically, just a couple of years ago, nobody had heard of Reopen San Diego. Nobody had even heard of my name or anything. And just like you, I think we all just felt kind of powerless. And I literally remember a couple weeks after the La Mesa riots and 3 buildings being burned down 2 miles from my house, and watching public health officials go from "the beaches will kill you" to "hey, it's perfectly okay to go out there and protest. You won't get killed," right? And that was when I had my wake up moment. And also part of my story. So I was raised Jewish, and I had a bat mitzvah. And later in life, I actually became Christian in my 30s. And so, thank you. I remember standing in the middle of my kitchen and feeling powerless and asking God, I know I'm supposed to do something. I don't know what to do. Show me what to do. And I just started speaking out on Facebook. And so basically what I'd say is, you have to start somewhere to get your name recognition out. And that's basically what you're asking, how do you get your name out there and how to get involved. It is simple as taking one step at a time. And everybody that's here tonight, you're here, this is a huge step. And I've watched people that have been in this fight, like David, for a really long time. Everybody say hi to David. Legend. Dan, oh, and I just want to say, and I forgot the question already, Gary, but
You know what?
Richard Bailey.
It's like any politician, you answer whatever you want.
You were elected in 2016, right?
2012 to council, 2016.
For mayor, right? I remember the very first time I ever heard your name, I saw the election results in Coronado. I think there were like only 6 people in Coronado that didn't vote for him. I'm like not exaggerating. It was amazing. He has overwhelming support. And just to conclude, our very first Reopen San Diego, we reached out to Mayor Richard Bailey, and he actually spoke at our very first Save San Diego rally. So he is a true freedom-loving mayor.
We are going to get into some Q&A.
Can I bring up a point?
Absolutely.
Okay, we've been trying to unseat Richard Pan, the senator who brought SB 277 for years. In 2018, Joshua Coleman did a special where he interviewed every single person walking out of the polls. Every single person said that they just voted for a man with a D behind their name. They did not care they just voted for the D. So kind of remember that in your area. So it's not going to work in East County. They're voting for ours in East County. But in La Mesa, definitely a D. So remember those points. Just
right.
It's all
so
about.
if I look at a kind of a spectrum, if you're voting at the presidential level, there's a bunch of us that are going to be voting based on issues and philosophies, right? There's a lot of people that are not. They're going to be voting based just purely on party. That may be a lot of us too. I understand that. But the name ID is extremely high. You were talking about name ID. The name ID, when you're running for president, is extremely high. All right. We'll take it all the way down to the other end of the spectrum, where we're talking about local candidates, where the name ID is very low. There's not a D or R next to the name, at least not on the ballot. Okay. And so, now if the party endorses someone, there's a mailer, there's member communications. I mean, obviously, that's why I said I think, it's good for people to be involved in a party, because how is anybody going to know what you are unless you get that endorsement and that member communications goes out? But how do you overcome the lack of name except by doing what he said? He says, hey, you want people to know who you are.
Yeah.
Well, do you think because Laura Lothian was a vibrant candidate in La Mesa alone, got people to know who she was? She knocked on doors, she talked to people. Yes, she aligned herself with that issue. I'm going to keep going backwards. She aligned herself with an issue that got people to identify her with that issue. Okay?
Yep.
It wasn't her alone. So that's important, and I will go back to that. Okay.
And she
We
ran
cannot-
before. I mean,
Yeah, she lost.
It wasn't her first time.
Oh, yeah, well, that was a difficult situation several years ago when she ran against Art Madrid and lost. I mean, you know, we're dating ourselves now. But, okay, we cannot run a campaign school for you tonight, right? Because it takes longer than whatever time we have left. And that's why, in Jenny's comments, we mentioned Amy Fawcett, that's why they're opening the C4 to do the educational piece. All right, and so, you know, I think that's why she said text that number. If you want to be involved in future campaign schools, things like that, that's where we really get into the nuts and bolts. But we can't do some nuts and bolts tonight, right? So I'm going to open it up to you and we'll go for questions. Todd.
One of the things that you both alluded to, but you didn't actually come out and say that I think is important in campaign is to be real. You know, I mean, I don't know Richard, but I know Amy, you know, for a while now. And I can tell you that there's no one who listens to Amy speak and doesn't think that is Amy. You know, she is not making up a position to get votes. She's not reading off of a script. You know, that's just not how it is. And I can tell you that more than anything, you know, you need to be the person you are to connect with people and make an impact.
And I want to jump off. You're out walking precincts, you end up at a door and you don't know what party they are. You don't know where they stand on an issue. Okay? They're going to ask you, where do you stand on this? The most important thing you can do in that situation is be honest. Okay, don't try to split the difference by saying, oh, blah, 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 until you find out where they stand. Just be honest. I guarantee you, in 75 to 80% of the cases, it will be the answer they wanted to hear. And if it's not, then you have a conversation with them when they end up liking you, despite you disagreeing with them on that issue. So, thank you. Others. Here, I'm going to go.
So, just in talking about being bipartisan and all this, what are some ways that you've seen that you can reframe your talking points to not sound like you're coming from the more partisan standpoint? So I think like the first thing that comes to my mind is rather than going up to someone and saying, do you believe in charter schools? You could just go up to them and say, you know, do you believe that all children should have a good education? Or that parents should have a choice?
You just answered your own question.
Well, I know, but I wanted your opinion also about ways to reframe those talking points.
Sure. You want to go first?
About being like nonpartisan.
Well, no. Have you learned anything during the reopen example, say, of talking to folks out there and reframing a way? Maybe you said something in the beginning that you found out turned people off. Was there any way or has it always just been, Amy, I'm going to turn you off whether I'm No, you don't have to have an answer. I'm just asking.
Well,
Think about it.
Reopen San Diego is nonpartisan. So, I mean, we literally have people from all walks of life. Yeah, we do tend to lean more towards conservative and Republican. But when I'm speaking in public, the people that I have in my mind is my 79-year-old Jewish mother who voted for Joe Biden, right? And I imagine that that's my audience, right? My mom also signed the recall for Newsom too. So I got a win there. I also have a 22-year-old son who just graduated from San Diego State. I also have a fifth grader, by the way. And my 22-year-old is not exactly a Republican. You know? So when his mom was elected Republican Activist of the Year last year, that wasn't exactly like, oh, Mom, that's amazing. So again, like when I'm speaking to people who are on the other side of the aisle, I imagine them as my mom or my son. And I'm not trying to argue with them. I'm trying to win them over, you know, with middle ground, something that we can agree on.
I would say the first task of any candidate or campaign team is to, one, identify the issues that you think will resonate, that are important to voters in your district. And number two is to develop an elevator pitch, a 30-second elevator pitch on each one of those issues in a way that humanizes the issue in such that a soccer mom who is not politically inclined would understand where you're coming from. Keep in mind, everyone here tonight, myself included, we're kind of the weird ones. I mean, like, we're showing two political events. Like, it is not normal to show up to political events like this. No offense, no offense. But like,
Just twice a week.
I know, really cool kids, really cool kids. Most people are not hyper partisan. They're just not. Most people only care, they care about the issues the same way most of us do. We just need to humanize them in a way that resonates with your typical soccer mom. And I want to bring up I know this is unrelated to school issues, but let's talk about the Second Amendment just real quick. A polarizing issue here, not in East County, but in California. If I go to liberal San Francisco or liberal Encinitas, and I say that I'm very much in favor of the Second Amendment, you should be able to carry around an AR-15, open carry. It's not going to go over very well, right? Like that. If you start there, you've not just lost your soccer mom, so you've lost 95% of the electorate within those jurisdictions. But if you start off and say, you know what, I think a single mom is raising kids on her own, is living in a tough area, tough part of town, should be able to protect herself. The cops are not going to get there to protect her. I think she should be able to protect herself. And that right there is something that most people can agree with. And if you agree with that, then that means you're a proponent of the Second Amendment. And congratulations, you're now on our side. And so I think that's really, really important to hear.
No, and there's a great example. So, I mean, if you're on someone's sports staff who has no idea, do you say, how do you feel about the fact that the government thugs are taking our guns away?
Right.
Or do you say, well, hey, what's your feeling on the Second Amendment? Okay. If you find out they've got a problem with some of them, but not all of them, you can have a conversation from that standpoint, because there's a lot of times who will tell you and believe it, and you won't have alienated them. Right? Does that help? You knew the answer.
That's a softball question for.
Who was over here? Yes. Nancy.
Okay, so I come from a kind of a unique perspective as a speak up. Okay, I'll speak loud. I'll use my teacher voice because I was an elementary school teacher.
Wah, wah.
Yeah, that's Charlie Brown. But anyways, I was a 2008 California and County Teacher of the Year. I also was a CTA California representative for 9 years. I was the union president of my district, teachers union, and I also was a negotiations chairperson, so I negotiated with the board. So I come from a different perspective in terms of how my relationships were with board members. And I think just speaking to a former board member who was in my, I spoke to today, Katie Dexter from Lemon Grove School District, we were talking. Fortunately, 3 of the 5 board members were parents of students that I had, so that allowed me to have a little bit of insight relationship with them. But I think when people are running for board members, I don't know if they're always aware of how many special interest groups are actually out there. PTA is a special interest group. The teachers union, we always hear about them, but we also have the classified union. We have a lot of special interest groups. And I think as people, I want to encourage everybody to be a candidate for a board member, because I bet you, if we were to ask you 5 years ago, who was your school board members, like myself, I didn't know. I live in La Mesa, but I was a teacher in the Lemon Grove School District. So I knew them, but I didn't know my own board members. I think that it's really important, that relationship that you talked about. I mean, for any kind of position. We used to say it as teachers, if the kids don't know that you care, they're not going to care to learn what you teach. You have to have that relationship. And I think as any kind of candidate in a district, in a community, you've got to start making connections. And I spoke to Katie Dexter today because I've never been a board member candidate. My husband's still teaching in the district that I'm qualified for, so when I do run for the Mesa, please remember me. When you retire.
A really good point here on developing relationships.
Absolutely, connect.
Well, unless there's something controversial going on, okay, in some of these, especially like school districts typically are more controversial, as David and Jim over here will tell you again, a healthcare district or a water district, and so what's going on. But a lot of times, unless there's something controversial going on, school board members may not hear from anybody. You know?
Exactly.
Well, no, so if you're the one person who's reaching out to someone, they start noticing and maybe you cultivate a relationship, and then ultimately you have a relationship with someone on the school board, you know? So I'm sure Jim never hears from anybody ever on anything.
Only you.
But also you were saying that, just as that most of the school board members that I know were actually parents in the district. And so they've already got a connection to their school, you know, they're usually, you start making yourself known among the community and your school and then start reaching out. I think successful candidates make an effort to not just door knock, but sit down and, I mean, I've heard of friends sitting out there in the front of their house and offering coffee and some donuts or, you know, lemonade and cookies, depending on the season, and just inviting the neighbors to come and talk and get a chance to know them. So I think that what we're learning is that relationship really is key to becoming successful.
Thank you for your input, especially as a California teacher.
Yeah. Trust me, I'm on the wrong side of things, you know.
Amy, you got a question?
Well, kind of more of a statement, but actually I do have a question for everybody else. Has anybody heard of Site Council?
Yes, my daughter's on it. Yes. I've been on it.
Are you guys on it?
Yes.
On your Site Council?
What is it, science?
The
school site.
Yeah, the
School
school,
site.
parents, teachers, and staff.
So each individual school has a Site Council. Now, I can beat you because I have a 27-year-old and a 7-year-old. And I've been in the La Mesa Spring Valley School District for that entire time. My son went to Bancroft, he graduated from Mount Business High School, my daughter is now at Oak. We are looking, honestly, because of our surrounding our neighborhood at where we want to live in the next 5 years. And that started because of a situation that as a single mom with my son, to now being married and then blessed to go to work from home, and be with my daughter. Being with her for 14 months was interesting. But I started looking and I thought, you know, there were all these things I couldn't do when my son was younger, and I'm gonna do them now. And so I started addressing a serious safety concern issue in La Casa. And that was when I learned how important something as small as the Public Works Department is. Something like, you know, meeting with Mark Slovin and their entire team. You guys probably don't know who that is, but these are the people that make stupid decisions to put a gas station at the corner of the most dangerous intersection in La Casa. I fought them for 2 years. Guess what? The gas station's up because it was approved in 2008. The gas station's up. However, I did win the battle because I am working with Ryan Lau with the county. I'm meeting all these people. The only way that you can do that, you get yourself on Site Council, you start meeting people. Then you start going to school board meetings. You get involved with PAC, which is the school board section of when you're on Site Council. You get to go to these special meetings with PAC. You learn about how all this stuff works. You learn about where the money comes from, where it's going. You get to help approve that for your school. You also get to learn your board, you get to meet your board members, which is so important. I look at my board members' morals more than I look at their titles and their, you know, whether they're a doctor or a nurse or a lawyer or whatever. I don't care about that. I want to know, what are your morals? Morally, what are you willing to accept? Morally, what are you willing to fight for when it comes to my kid? Because what comes from my kid, I'm looking at all of the kids. I'm looking at every child in my daughter's second grade classroom. And I want to fight for her. So every single name on the ballot, no matter how big or small, whether it's president or whether it's county public works, they all matter. And you've got to dig into those names and really research each and every name. Because something as small as a gas station can make such a huge impact in your community and the safety of your kids.
So Amy, was your question, who knows what the school site council?
Yes, that was my question.
David or Jim, if someone wanted to be involved in the school site council, how would they, do you know how would they go about finding?
They have to
You gotta go to the individual school.
No, they have actually, I gotta tell you, this kind of a silly story, but my daughter got elected to the to the Lemon Avenue School Site Council, only because I put out, people go, who do we vote for? Because they had this paper that said these, you know, if you want to run, I had my daughter fill it out, and I told everybody, vote for Autumn, because she's my daughter, and she's a great person, and she won.
So they have to go to the school and ask.
They actually, the school sends out an application to anybody who's interested.
Okay.
But I think that's the issue. I think that's the beauty of.
Have Q&A time.
I think that's the beauty of the parent association, in my opinion, is Site Council is a great one. There's some other, you know, with Cajon Valley, there's some other committees you can get on and things like that, and that's awesome. But Site Council, you have to be voted in by your peers, right? Exactly. As a parent.
Yes.
The beauty of the parent association, in my opinion, is we're trying to work with our school boards. We don't have to be voted in. We don't have to come and, explain why we should be on and whatnot. We're just parents and we just want to work with our school board for the same, we should be working towards the same goals. That's it, period.
Okay.
I love you, Amy, but that's just
The
my
crazy-
opinion.
All right.
Yeah, no, the crazy thing though, with site council, you need 3 parents and 3 teachers, and it's hard for us to get 3 parents to
Okay.
even put themselves up or put someone up for nomination. We're 1 parent short this year.
By the way, that, I mean, if you were really serious about running for office, I mean, this is the way also to get it. So, questions for these 2 beautiful people, not just beautiful men, beautiful women, and I told you I was happy. Just saying it. Anybody, any questions? No one out there? No?
This is just a real macro, this is more of a macro question than a candidate question. What can we do to stop the nonsense about them renaming ballot measures, feel-good things to get people to vote? Like the property tax is for fire survivors and.
Okay, you know what, I'd love to spend 20 minutes on that issue. That's a Secretary of State, AG, type thing going on up there where because a particular party is in political control, they can get away with those things, and then it's only a lawsuit and lawsuits do, but it's kind of, we don't have the money to fund those kind of lawsuits.
I didn't know if there was a ballot measure being worked up or something.
Yeah, well, no, I understand that there is a ballot measure being worked on that would make the naming process on ballot measures more balanced. But whether that gets anywhere and people understand it, we'll see. Anybody know anything else on that? You.
Quick question. So how important do you think it is? I think you know the answer to put an R versus an I. Right.
So at the local level, you do that. They're nonpartisan races. In Cajon Valley, and at the local level, anything from county supervisor down. Okay, if you put it that way, county supervisor should be low on the total. But that's the way people look at it. They're nonpartisan races. So you do not identify with a particular party with your name. Now, when you get your ballot statement, that may be a different story, but so it doesn't work that way. They're not running in any kind of partisan for partisan. I would say it depends on the circumstance when you get your ballot statement, whether you want to or not, and that depends on how many registered folks there are. That's a nuance. But what I was talking about was the importance of being aligned with the party from endorsements. Because, for instance, if you're a Republican and you get endorsed by the Republican Party, okay, the Republican Party is not going to telegraph that you're a Republican to anybody but the Republican. Okay? Now, are you hiding the fact that you're a Republican? No. It's just that it's not going to be pushed in people's faces. And sometimes people who choose, my opinion, is people who go decline to stay as a candidate because they're trying to play the middle, end up losing any party endorsement and then get lost in the shadow.
Yes.
That's my opinion. I don't know if you have an opinion. That seems like logical.
Yeah, I have a pretty strong opinion on that. Even in jurisdictions where you have, say, the Republican, let's just use Republicans as an example. If you're a Republican candidate, Republicans want to make up 25% of the electorate. It is worth your while to receive that endorsement from the party so that 25% of the electorate gets a notification saying, hey, this is our person. It is up to the candidate, though, to lead with the issues, to campaign on the issues, and they can rely on the party to speak to those Republican voters within their jurisdiction. Going back to relationships, depending on the size of the district you're running for, you will not have the time to actually physically knock on every single door and talk to every single voter. You just won't. So how do you build relationships? Well, you build relationships in a number of ways. One of those ways, this is why people tend to vote for their candidate that shares the R or D next to the candidate's name in certain races, is you let those voters know, hey, we share the same party affiliation. That's what the party will do. When that voter knows they share the same party affiliation as you, then that relationship is now stronger than it is with the other candidate. That voter is more likely to vote for you. So I think it's highly worthwhile.
Got anything on that one?
I have a follow-up.
Let me just say it another way. Party member communications is the party putting out the cost for putting your name out there with their voters, and it relieves you of having to spend that money gives you the ability to spend your hard-earned funds on decline estates and the other parties, whichever it is. Right. That's what being not part of, right? Yeah, and then we're gonna go.
Along the same line is another way as new candidates. I belong to the Republican Women's of San Diego, and we just recently had our elections. We have a new president for the county. So if you go to that president, you can get a list of all, or you can even go online to find out all the women's meetings, when they meet, everything. And we always have guest speakers. We typically have 2 to 3 speakers once a month per club. Okay, and we rotate. Okay, so I believe you're at Claremont on Saturday. Or is that the wrong day?
I hope it's the wrong day.
I'm like 10 or 15 places.
Right, okay, and that's another way to get your name out, as an example. We also do a lot of volunteer work, getting names out, mailers, phone calls, signs. And I have a tendency to, if I see a sign if I'm driving around and it's someone I don't want, I'll keep flyers in my car and I'll put it on their door to get everything about this person because of this, and this, and that. And they always have ratings, hi. And I leave. So I target the opposite side too.
So the idea of a team is really important,
Oh,
as
absolutely.
opposed to just being individuals trying to run their own.
Right. Right.
I did, I as a Republican Party will be able to make contact with Republicans when they go ask for some independence.
That has to do with state law and the fact that it's.
I've looked at that state law and I can't find it.
Dan, you want to speak to it?
Now, the long story short is that the Republican Party is there to support Republican candidates. So we can't, we can't support someone who's not a Republican candidate.
You know what?
It's in our bylaws.
I misspoke. I believe it's a federal election law, even though it's not federal offices. It's the use of campaign dollars to do anything outside of it.
Right.
But it carries down to the local one.
And it's also in our bylaws.
Well, no, I can't tell you right now, but I can tell you it is absolutely against campaign law for parties to spend communication dollars on anything other. Brett, you know?
Can I just want to include a couple of things.
Okay.
I think there's no substitute for learning the issues that are in front of your school board. That's watching old meetings that are online, reading old agendas, reading the minutes of the meetings. A great way to put yourself out there is to start acting like the 6th school board member and speak out. I love the way Amy speaks out at county meetings. But if you want to be on the school board, you go in front of them and speak calmly and act like you're the adult in the room, even if they're having a food fight up on the dais. The best way to show that you can do the job is start doing it in front of the school board. The other thing I want to say, I'm the second vice chair of the Republican Party, and we have a campaign school that's starting later this month. It's $100 for 2.5 days, and you can email Jordan Gascon at the party. He can give you the information about it. It's $99. You get 2 lunches for free. It teach you all the nuts and bolts that you need to have. Last thing I want to say, you got to get started now.
Yes.
This isn't something that you can start putting together in the summer. You got to get your ducks in a row now. Start raising your money, putting your campaign plan.
But by the way, what Brad just talked about, when you're going in front of your school board, there's sometimes something you may not even know about. Say there's a vacancy on your school board and no one had it. Let's say it's for terrible reason, someone passed away, but someone moves out of town, they resign. All of a sudden there's a vacancy. Okay, they're going to get applications for that vacancy. Who do they know? They're going to know some of them. There's probably going to be the union person. There's going to be some PTSA folks, blah, 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 blah. But are you among the folks that they know out of the 10 applications because you're the person who's been in front of them every time and they see you as the adult of the room even though there's a food fight going on up there, you know, you don't get involved in that food fight as an adult. I agree with you. But sometimes there's things that are more immediate wins that you may not even expect, because all of a sudden you're known entity with your public figures. So, okay,
Get
other
appointed.
questions? Yes.
So as a person not particularly wanting to be on the tip of the spear, wanting to get more parents involved, I'm only seeing myself and maybe 2 or 3 other parents coming to board meetings. How do you motivate people to show up? How can I inspire more people to get involved and show up?
Sure.
So we literally
Fast
started.
mandates. Oh, you meant without that, okay.
So we faced the same exact thing with Reopen San Diego, right? We literally started with 5 people. And before that, we were just a Facebook group that decided to meet in person. You know, and you know, the East County Parent Association is a Facebook group. And here you are, meeting in person. And so what we did with Reopen San Diego is we created as many in-person events, by the way, during a time when in-person events weren't even allowed. We called them speakeasies. So I would encourage like more events like this, because people are really craving connection, and this is how you grow a community. For me, I actually work in marketing. That's what I do full time. Reopen San Diego is just my labor of love. But I've applied what I've learned about marketing to Reopen San Diego. We started off with 100 email lists 1 year ago. We now have 6,000. Is anybody on the email list for Reopen San Diego? Okay, all right. I email you guys 5, 6, 7 times a week, right?
Yes, you do.
Thank you.
I haven't checked my spam lately.
Thank you for not unsubscribing, right? But it's about building relationships with people, which is what you're doing, Tracy.
And
So,
isn't that
I would
what this
just
is for?
encourage more of it.
An
Yeah.
event, an opportunity to
Well,
meet people.
I want you to answer it too, but you know, there's also the reality. I think you're addressing it from the reality of, say there's no controversial issue that's gotten people motivated. You know, well, there is right now. You know, and by the way, I mean, some of this carries forward because people are fed up. You know, but there's a lot of situations where there's nothing going on, and it's really difficult to get people out of the business of their lives and their parenting and their ailing parents and everything else we deal with in our lives. And that's what you're talking about. It's a difficult situation. What I've found is when there is a controversial issue, people show up, and then it's easier to grab onto them. But then how do you sustain their? You're not going to sustain them all. So don't look at, because 100 people got involved, and in 3 years only 20 of them are, as a failure. Because that's 20 more than you had before. I mean, you have to look at the realities of the situation, that people will go back to their lives at some point. But try to sustain the folks you know, not everybody's going to be reading your emails when COVID's over, but we're going to have a lot more people that are motivated than we did before, because they've learned something they didn't know about their government.
Yes. Yes.
Something maybe they didn't like. You want to try to answer?
Absolutely. As Barry was mentioning, whether or not people show up to a meeting tends to be what issues are being discussed. As it relates to kind of building a coalition that can be leverage to apply pressure on board members to vote a certain way, I would recommend 2 things. Find the influencers within your community, whether that's through social media or the PTA parents or what have you. Find influencers that have their own network, have their own email distribution list, would be willing to send something out to that distribution list, and make it easy to influence. What do I mean by that? Even if you're not a candidate, the fact that you're showing up to school board meetings means you are the tip of the spear. So congratulations. So you might be the only one that is even aware that this particular issue is coming up. And so then it's incumbent upon you to digest this issue in a way that's very easy for people to understand, and then put talking points together, and then go to those influencers and say, I need you to send this email out to your networks. And specifically tell your networks, here's who to email, here's what to say, because this is what's going on. So find the influencers and make it easy to influence.
And I would add that sometimes, especially with social media, I mean, Facebook groups, I mean, everybody's got some group, even if it's not related to school. I mean, there's some group probably that you're what's going on in your community, guys. It tends to be, a lot of people see it, those are impressions, but only a few people like actually have conversations depending on the issue, right? If you see some of the same names, have you befriended any of those folks and then like trying to get together with them? Because maybe they're looking for something to get engaged in, and that's why they're engaged on Facebook in the first place. They're looking for a vehicle, you know. I mean that's it.
And on that, I know many communities have, say, La Mesa happens, or Coronado happens.
Which La Mesa happens?
Oh, Lord.
Yes,
Here we go.
Good one and the bad one. Here we go.
Coronado as well. As the one in Coronado was growing, and I kind of saw that, hey, this can become something, I reached out and befriended the administrator on that page. And that way, if there was someone, we developed a relationship outside of politics. He actually happens to be a very, very liberal former drug convict, no joke. But we became very good friends. And whenever someone would post misinformation or take a shot at me or say something that was not true, well, who do you think went to bat? The administrator of the group. I'm sorry, John Doe, you're not allowed on this group. So, first person you might want to be friends, reach out to the administrators for no reason other than just to get them.
By the way, the La Mesa happenings, that's kind of funny. There's the La Mesa happenings with the 14,000 on it, where they say, does anybody know where I can get ice in La Mesa? That's
What's the gunfire? Oh, what's that?
And then there's the much smaller one, you know, with, I think it's about 4,000 at 4.5. So it's much smaller. So you think, okay, you're gonna have less impact there. But the administrator of that page is ensuring it's real content and not letting people advertise, you know, too much and making sure that you're in La Mesa if you're doing it and so on. You know, well, because he wanted to get engaged, he reached out and said, you know, hey, what's going on? I want the Republican Party at the national level to support Laura Lofi. Well, I had this conversation with him about, well, you know, it's not the way it works. And the next thing you know, he's introduced to Laura. He started using his page at the end of the election to support her. Now, we're maybe some people think, well, maybe, but it seemed like a lot of people on his smaller page wanted substance, not where can I buy ice in La Mesa, you know? So just another thing. The social media's got a lot of influence.
Okay. When it comes to name recognition, which is what you were talking about, I've got to tell you that I'm one of those 14 parents that started the Parent Association, so I've been involved in a lot of. Got lucky. So we are involved in every school district in San Diego County, and I can tell you I've watched a gazillion board meetings, and I can tell you that the best thing you could possibly do is go to every single one of your board meetings and find something to speak about and do it calmly. And just, you know, I always find, I've spoken 60 times in front of Oceanside Unified, and I can tell you that I always find an on-agenda topic and an off-agenda topic. And the on-agenda is always like something specific about some real issue so that people think, okay, this guy is actually paying attention. The off-agenda is an ad. The off-agenda, we talk about school issues, but it always ends with, when I was running for school board at least, it always ended with, and vote for Todd Madison, toddforkids.com. I had the background on the Zoom, you know, with that showed up in it all. And right now, you may have 3 parents on yours, but I can tell you, when I watch school board meetings around the county, there are hundreds of parents usually on all the Zoom meetings. And so there is no way you can reach that many parents, and they're involved parents, they're parents who care. So if you're thinking about it now, get on those people.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then Diane,
Yes. So when you mentioned running for office, it sounds really scary. Like going out on the campaign trail and doing all that. I guess it was a question, comment sort of deal, but I guess what I was thinking of when you kind of get this fright of running for office is the idea of just actually being there for that opportunity, right? if you don't take the opportunity to run, then you won't get elected 100% of the time. But, you know, if you actually show up and you attempt it, and so Barry knows, I'm good friends with Barry. You know, I ran for a very, very low local office, and I was 21 at the time, and I signed up, and I got elected to it. But it was for that very reason that, you know, I thought, well, I'm 21, who's ever going to vote for me? And then I actually got on the board. So there's a question comment, but I guess it's kind of framing it like a politician. You know, would you agree?
Would you agree that
showing up is
you'll
gonna
lose
be-
100% of the time you don't put your name on the ballot?
But yeah, I guess just in your own experience, are there any, you know, ways that you've seen that really play out? Showing up to the plate is where you're going to succeed.
Well, yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier being a known entity, so if there's a vacancy. But what about a situation where you put your name on the ballot and the real surprise is that the incumbent doesn't file, but you have? Well, at that point, you got 5 days. You got 5 days for other people to get in, but that's kind of a short time. I've seen people win just by putting their name on the ballot, and there was no one else. Okay, I mean, I think you were in a situation there were nine running for 7 seats or something, right? Boy, I gotta get in.
Yeah, you go.
Of course, you know, that was only a year and a half ago, but now you're only 23. 24. Okay. Well, no, but I mean, so that's an instance where it plays out. There's an instance where it plays out where even if you've run and you lost, all of a sudden you've made yourself a known entity. So say there's a vacancy after that, where, okay, sometimes, I mean, I've seen elected boards say, we're gonna consider someone to fill a vacancy that didn't put their name out there. You know, 4 people run for office, where there's a vacancy, how come there's 14 that apply for the vacancy? How come those 10 didn't run? So, I mean, there's a lot, oftentimes benefits that you can't measure just by whether you win or lose, right? Okay, you gotta get going, because you wanna keep your relationship.
I do.
So you wanna make a closing comment?
Yeah. The closing comment is this. One of my favorite quotes is that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men and women to do nothing.
Yes.
You're all good men and women like in this room tonight. I know many of you are going through this learning curve right now of how to get involved, how to influence the process, how to win an election. We're all in this together, so thank you guys for stepping up and having the courage to do it. So I'm very, very excited to be on your team. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was it. Thanks, Edmund Burke, by the way.
It is a learning curve, right? Last years, I think we've all learned a lot more than we probably learned before. Are there term limits? Is it a paid position? What are the demands? Like, when would you start campaigning? When, you know, those are my thoughts.
Okay, yeah, so, I mean.
Just have Jim
Yeah, I mean,
Miller stand.
someone said you gotta get started, right? Okay, well, I mean, I'd say it's too late already, but no, but do you not do anything? So, I mean, I don't know of any term limits at, for any school board.
Oh, term limits, no, but it's 4-year terms.
There's no maximum number of terms you can serve for a school board.
But it's elected every 4 years?
Well, that's the term limit. If the voters say, we don't want to continue, you've been term limited, right? But there's no mandatory term limit. You can run as many times as you want, right? Yeah. Okay, how much you get paid, Jim?
I don't.
Okay.
It's a per diem of like $504 a month.
Yeah.
Which makes out about $1 an hour. If you're doing it all.
Yeah. So, I mean, it typically is not about that you're supplanting a regular job with this, not at the local level. City of San Diego Council, you know, that's a different story, but that's not what we're talking about here. State Assembly, State Senate, County Supervisor, Congress, those are full-time jobs. What we're talking about is they're not full-time jobs, okay?
How many hours approximately? I mean,
Oh,
you
that's a good
guys-
question.
Yes. Just because I talked to Katie today and I asked her that same question because I asked that. And she said she takes at least 15 hours, that was minimum, because she would get the board packet on a Friday, she'd peruse it, look it over carefully over the weekend, highlight those areas that she had questions about, email. proper people questions, and then actually gives a good deal. But she said she spent a lot of time at the schools, at the district office. But I have a question for you, because I was looking about that, because I know people have said that the deadline to submit your name as a candidate was like March 31st or something, 30th, the 30 days has
So,
September. But you,
okay,
so can they campaign before that?
Let's not get confused between the primary election in the state and the November general election. Okay, all of these offices we're talking about, almost, nearly all, are one shot in November.
So you don't get,
So,
there's no time?
so the deadline, filing will open in July, near the beginning of July. And it will close on a Friday, either the first or second Friday in August. And that's the opportunity to go file your papers in the deadline. It's 88 days before the election.
So can they campaign before then, Barry?
Oh,
Can
yeah,
they
yeah,
start
yeah.
getting fundraising?
Yeah, and we're not gonna be able to answer all these questions tonight, but qualifying for the ballot is different about the paperwork someone would have to file if they're gonna raise money. You know, I don't wanna get into all that, but you can raise money now, but you can't do that without filing, forms to say, hey, I'm gonna give you money. That's different qualifying. So that would be the nuts and bolts of, the campaign schools we're talking about. But Diane, I mean, when I got elected and when they said it was similar, I would get the agenda on a Friday. I'd sit down over the weekend and, take a few hours and read that. If there was a land use issue, I didn't want to be the guy who all I knew was what people were screaming at me about kids are gonna die, or whatever. I wanted to go out and take a look. So I was doing that. But what I did learn over the years is the longer you're there, and Jim, I'm gonna ask you about this, the longer you're there, there's ongoing issues where you know about them already and you're very educated on them. So it gets to the point where it's not because you're getting lazy, it's because when you get that agenda, and you're reading about that 40-page land use issue, you already know about it because you've seen it like 2 or 3 times, so it does get easy. Jim, any thoughts on time spent?
Okay, so when I was asked the first one for the Tacoma Valley School Board, to put some thoughts to it, I was told I was lied to.
You'll love it. It'll be fun.
But I got involved because my little girl has allergies. The school didn't have the district didn't have a district-wide allergy policy. So she went from one school at additional kindergarten to another at kindergarten. That's how I figured out, hey, it's not the same at each school. So I worked on that, and that was one of my motivations to actually run. But to do the job right, okay, you're talking anywhere from 10 at minimum to, nobody has a COVID playbook running in school, especially Cajon Valley has stayed open, or just public school district in the state that stayed open. So our board members, for the majority of them, probably spend at least 20 hours on school district issues in one facet or another, give or take, per week. Right? Because you have to think about it. If you're on a school site and you're in a business school site, that's at least a 3-hour half day. Minimum. If you're on a middle school site, that can be an entire day. Then if you're like me and you're writing actual bylaws, curriculum, administration rules, that's because I'm the lawyer on the board. Everybody kind of bursts me for that. But there's a whole nother set of time you have to go in. Then what happens to schools? You get sued all the time. Again, I'm the lawyer who's on the school board, so all the litigation stuff filters through me, then back to the board from our lawyers. So there's a whole bunch of time you're going to have to spend. Now, I go to CSBA, it's California School Board Association Summit every year. I talk to school board members from up and down the state that do nothing.
Yes.
They go to the CSBA.
Yeah. It's in San Diego.
They mail it in. I say, how many school sites do you guys have? Well, we have 15 schools. How many schools do you visit during a year? We mean visit schools. Like, yeah, I went to a play at one of our schools. No, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, going to the school, walking into a dozen or more classrooms, seeing what the teachers are doing, seeing what the seekers are doing in the special ed areas, talking to the PE coaches about why that kid's running a lap and that kid's not. Those types of questions. Oh, we don't do that. That's the majority of the school board.
Yes.
Whether it's a big district or a small district, they mail it in because they wanted to have the title of being on the school board. And it makes no sense to me. Because if you do it right, it is the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my professional career.
So Jim, you got non-lawyers money to get elected, so no one's coming to them on litigation other than when there's a closed session and they got to vote on something.
But think about this, though, right?
I'm trying to figure out what's reasonable to think an average person would spend if they were doing a job, but they had a real job.
Right.
So they can't leave their real job for everything. How many hours?
You're still, if you're doing it right, it's still anywhere from 10 to 15, 20 hours.
Yeah.
Because think about it, I'm a lawyer.
A
on the
week
board,
or a
Jeremy
month?
is-
A week or a month?
Jeremy is a very family service. What else happens to schools?
Oh, he gets his hot friends and lowly
There's
faces.
different specialties. You bring your own specialties and your own background to that board, right? If you're in finance or marketing, that's a part of what schools do. If you're a marriage and family therapist, a psychiatrist, what do you get special education? We have different specialists. It just depends on what your niche is on that board, but you can find it. But I will tell you this, if you're going to run, the Home Valley, just as an example, has a budget of almost $250 million. That is a huge responsibility of taxpayer money. Huge. Right? So there will be things in there that you're gonna, if you are on the outside, like, why are they spending money on that? It takes a little bit of time to understand why, if the why is still there. It's not always there. Right? But it is a huge budgeting process. You have to get your head around that size of budget. Now, La Mesa Spring Valley is a smaller district, doesn't have that sort of budget. But our budget is much larger than the city that we're in, the city of Elton Holmes budget. You think the city of Elton Holmes has a huge budget? It's one of the biggest cities in the county of San Diego. The school district's large. We're a larger employer. We employ over 2,000 people. We have almost 17,000 kids in our district. So those are the things you have to really work on. What does LCAP mean? I had no idea what LCAP meant before I went to school. But these are the types of issues you find out. And also earlier about getting your name recognition out there. When you can't knock on every door, my comment, go to the political action groups who are active. From PTA, right, PTSA, to, in my position, I sit on the board of the San Diego County Gun Owners Political Action Committee, with the fastest growing political action committee in the state. We have 3,000 members. We have a whole bunch of these counties.
Yes, sir.
Right? So you go to those groups, you gain their endorsement, and now they are campaigning for you. There's a force multiplier, along with obviously the party. Because they're going to contact their people so they know who you are. It's very important.
And I believe the campaign school, that we're talking about, she talks about a lot of that stuff, coalition building, and that sort of thing. So, Jim, we also, I understand completely what you're saying. We don't want to scare anybody into thinking they have to have some particular expertise.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
now,
you don't, because you can be a parent.
Here are the qualifications. People say you're not qualified. You're not qualified. The Constitution says whether you're qualified or not. It says you're a certain age and you're a citizen of this country. At least it's still that way.
Yeah.
And you're registered to vote. You're registered to vote in the district.
Exactly.
Those are the qualifications. Now, people may look at your pedigree and decide they don't want you. They do want you because of whatever, because you've got some, whether you're not, blah, 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 blah. But those are not qualifications. So no one should be scared from running for office. Now think about the time. Think about the time commitment and the fire in your belly that you're going to do the time.
Time commitment, passion.
Just gonna say, let me ask you.
We get a question.
Oh, Jennifer.
So you're talking about passion. So we're all a bunch of pissed off moms, right? And it's really easy to want to do something active, proactive when you're pissed off, right? So now how do you balance that when you're in the political swing of things and you have to, be unbiased for a situation, or you have to use your brain and not your heart, and that's hard for me to do. And so running for a school board, we speak to these school board members and we think to them, I always thought, why can't they just smile at me, or why can't they connect with me in some way? They're just sitting there like rocks, and I don't want to be that way, but but then I see how they ended up, and I don't want to end up that way either. And so there's a lot of things that I want to run for certain reasons, right? So and I want to keep those reasons. And how do you balance that with doing what's right and doing what's unbiased and doing
How do you
doing
not
the
get
job?
jaded?
Yeah.
Well, one, as far as unbiased is, and I don't want to misinterpret the term unbiased, right? But don't lose your passion for what you think is right. And if you're elected, in theory, the constituents agree with your position. They agree with your direction.
Yeah.
So go with that. Now, if your position is, I don't want to spend any money because we're ultra conservative, but yet we have to spend money to bring up on the project, right? Then you have to balance that out as to, okay, this is what I ran on, but now that I'm in this process, I know that we do in fact have to build this wing of the school because it was built in 1957 and it's fallen down, right?
Got it. Yeah.
So you'll educate yourself through that process. So I think that will help anybody who runs. Once you're in it, if you win, listen to staff, but also listen to external influences so you can get both sides.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to just listen to the people who've been doing it the same way for 20 years. That's not going to help you.
Yeah.
I didn't run to be in the same position as the board has been in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
That doesn't help anybody. But as far as passion is concerned, I think Richard said it really well. Know your place.
Mm-hmm.
Know the issues, and speak on it passionately, but speak on it directly.
Okay.
And people will buy into that. They'll believe you because you believe yourself.
Okay.
Part of what you're asking is the difference between running and governing. You know?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If you've seen the classic movie, The Candidate, you know, the last phrase was, "What do we do now?" You know, when he won, he didn't think he was going to win, and then you know, I think it was the last quote in the movie. What do we do now? You know, it's kind of a what do we do now? And so there are nuances to governing that sometimes people don't think about when you're running.
Well, like when you have to sit on the board, we can't we can't respond, and I feel horrible about that.
But we don't like you for that.
It doesn't make sense that I can't respond to this person who's passionately telling me about their child who's stuck in a mask, and I fully agree that the mask should be an option. But I can't say anything until I have my board report, which doesn't come up for another 45 minutes or 2 hours later in the meeting, right? And by then they've left.
Yeah. And they wonder why did they sit there like
That's right.
Because Robert's rules of order and how we govern is we cannot engage in a non-agendized manner. This is where it works.
Can we wait to the people?
I've had some board members, not just school board, I've had elected call me, you know, and say, oh, you know, staff is mad at me and so on and so forth. And, you know, and I always try to say, well, it doesn't mean you have to hate staff. You know, there's a difference between being friends and being friendly, okay? I mean, staff didn't elect you, okay? The staff didn't elect
Thank you.
Okay, does that mean you should hate the staff and be at odds with them? No, you're not going to get anywhere. You want them to at least, they may not agree with you on things, but you want to be respectful enough that they're going to assist you with your agenda when you want something, an agenda, or you know, whatever it is. Okay? So, but I think part of it, oftentimes people, they get elected, and then they're so caught up, they don't see the citizens all the time unless they're before them, but they see the staff, and they become new friends, and then they don't want to have the staff back, something like that. Well, there's nothing friends with a lot of staff. You know, but there's a difference between saying, hey, at the end of the day, you know, unless they live in the community, you know, they're not going to vote for me. But it's a citizenship. So you got to find a respectful way.
And the reason I asked the question is because, you know, my son, I got involved because I just didn't like what was going on, right? And at home, you know, I'm teaching my kid at home at the same table I'm having dinner with him at, and we're fighting, you know, and I'm teaching him math, and then we're eating dinner at the same table, and we can't stand each other, and I don't like that. And, you know, and we show up and we, you know, I met with the school superintendent, and I went to, you know, I went to her office and I spoke with her directly, and then I see her in a board meeting. It's completely different. And I don't want to disillusion myself into thinking that my passion is just going to keep me going for all, this whole time. There's going to have to be times where I have to understand, like, the state coming down is really a big deal. And I don't think it's a big deal as a parent, because I think you should just do this. But I know, I know that the state, takes precedent. And so I just, my question, you answered it well when you said, you find what you're passionate about, and then you kind of get in the situation and then feel it out, because,
What you're talking about is good.
Yeah.
I've seen some of the most passionate people get to a point where they don't want to lose this office. And then they're there, 15, 20 years, and then the passion's not there anymore. And you can see it. And it becomes, I used to joke about, so when you get elected, when is it in the process you become the evil entrenched in the humble? Is it the day you
That
get
was really my
sworn in,
question.
Or is it 2 years, or if at all?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I like, I'm my 5th year in and I'm still learning a lot.
Mhm.
I mean, $250 million budget, 27 school sites, 17,000 kids, over 2,000 employees. No playbook for COVID. That was all new. We had a whole other thing where we brought 24 families back from Afghanistan. There's no playbook for that for the school district.
Good job.
Right? I'm having secret meetings with people I can't talk about, in secret places about where kids are going in safe houses in Afghanistan. That's not part of being on the school board. It is not. It is in Cajon Valley this year.
On the job training.
So you'll learn, right? If you're passionate, if you really enjoy helping the kids, and that's what you're there for, you're going to learn. And at some point, I agree with Barry. You become the entrenched incumbent when you don't really care anymore about what you're doing, but you care more about your office.
Okay.
That would be my position on that. That'd be my thought. But you learn a lot, and passionate project, like I would consider myself a very fiscally conservative person, right? And there's a huge issue in my district about spending on travel. That's a huge issue in my district. But yet I'm in the district, and I realize that we have a product called the World of Work that no other district has come up with. I was part of the team that patented the trademark on it, and we sell this to other districts. Well, now we have a business that brings money into the general fund. Well, like any other business, you have to market that business. You need to travel to trade shows and conventions and so forth so that other districts see that. So there's a balance. Like, well, I don't want to spend X number of dollars to send the superintendent, the associate superintendent, and 2 board members to this place, this $5,000. But if we sell one World of Work package to one district, it's $15,000 back to us. Now we may not sell it that convention, maybe be the next one. So now I take my fiscal conservative hat off and put my business hat on, which should be the same hat, by the way.
Yeah.
Right? And realize it takes a little bit of money to market because we have a product that is now globally recognized. It's recognized by the Brookings Institute, recognized by the Federal Department of Education. Multiple times we've met with both the Trump administration and the Biden administration. But it takes money to get there. So I fight against that every time that I approve a travel cost. But I realize it can come back to us, or it goes into professional learning, or it goes into other things that will help our district, things we can't get locally. If we can't get it locally, then have to get someplace else. That's just my own internal issues.
Okay. It looks like your superintendent left, but you wanted to.
He lives in Encinitas, yes.
You wanted to say something about him?
Well,
She was hoping to do a water.
Oh, no, I actually.
Okay.
I
We're
just-
gonna-
Can I
Is
just
there anybody
share?
who hasn't asked a question? Because we gotta kind of.
Well, since my trustee is up here, I'm curious, speaking of money, how much, so we've heard different stories of how much it takes to run a campaign. We met with Carl last week. He was interested in helping, whoever is interested in running.
You got Carl Rove on board?
Yeah, explain who that is to our parents.
And some of the, I love Carl, but
Does everybody know who
DeMaio.
Yes.
Carl DeMaio.
Yeah, his name is not.
we're on a first name basis. So the amount of what some people are telling us what it costs to run is very different than what some other people tell us it costs to run. So I'm curious if you could speak to that. And also on that note, the pros and cons of running on a slate versus yourself.
That was my question.
Yeah, because we've heard
Well,
different stories on that
I don't know what
too.
Jim's gonna answer, but I'm gonna answer that It depends on the school board, it depends on whether you're running against an incumbent or not, it depends on what's going on. And on the last one, it depends on the situation. So it's situational. So there's no, I mean, you probably find a deficiency being on slate. But that's not what she's asking. She's asking, running with a slate of people that are running.
So Santee has a 42-year incumbent and a 30-year incumbent that are up for re-election this year. So Slate, speaking of Slate, like, how do you fight that Goliath? And Diane.
Because we've heard pros and cons of doing it. We've heard people say, no, you just go in one really strong candidate. That's all you need. And then we have other people telling us to tell you all who are interested in running, no, you got to get on a slate.
And the reason I say it's situational is because some of these are at large, top 2, 3 locators. Some of them are by district. It depends on what we're doing and where we're talking, and then the cost in that, how many voters, the cost. Right.
So
Cajon Valley, let's speak to Cajon Valley.
So, and I now run in 2 elections, which are exactly what Barry just talked about. One was general at large for the entire district, and then we had to go to voting districts. So we split our district up in the second election because people are going around suing school districts and city councils under the California Voter Rights Act, and not suing to win, but suing because if you don't change it, you're going to owe us attorney's fees. So they're basically holding districts hostage. Very similar to the Disabilities Act law. I walk into your bathroom, I walk out, your bathroom is 2 inches too narrow on the door. Well, I don't want to really sue you. Why don't you just fix that door and then pay me $10,000 in attorney fees?
They're 34 inches, by the way.
It's the exact same thing with the voter district. So when I ran the first go around, I ran on a slate. Myself and Sharon Mejia ran for the spots. Right? We were both endorsed by the Republican Party. I had name recognition. I was lucky enough I grew up out in East County. I go soccer. I was on the Grossmont Foundation Board of Directors. All these other things.
Grossmont Hospital.
Grossmont Hospital. Did a lot of things, right? Karen had the educational background as an American Family Therapist. We made a good connection, and we ran as a slate. And we went 1-2. So we won. Great. Next go around, our districts are split. So now I have to run in an individual district, and lucky me, I'm in the largest district of those that were split. Now, same number of people, but I had the largest number of registered voters. So in Karen's district, I think she ran and won with 1,600 or 2,600 votes. In my district, I ran and I won and she won her re-election by 102 votes total. It was very close. I ran in my district in Rancho San Diego primarily. Well, I have 16,000 registered voters. We had 8,000 votes for me, like 2,000 votes for the other person. I won by 66 or 67%. Very different because now I'm on my own. There is no slate when you're running district to district. And I don't know, I think Santee is in districts. I don't think Santee is that large. Do you know, Barry?
They have areas, you mean?
Yes.
I actually don't.
I don't know either.
Because that's going to be a key. Is do you have to run one-on-one against the incumbent, or do you run slate against slate?
Areas.
The registrar would know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
It's just easy to
it
look
should
up.
be on the school district website.
And so did you spend different amounts of campaign money running as a slate as compared to running as an individual?
Running slate district-wide, I want to say was a little bit more than running individually.
Okay.
But not much, because if you're going to run a campaign properly, you're still going to buy the slate mailer, you're still going to get your signs out, you're still going to help, buy pizza and Coke for your volunteers. You're going to still get that cost out to make sure you do it right. And as far as size of district, I think it's going to be the determination as to the cost.
By the way, you can go one way, but I mean, you're going to hear different things out there, right? I understand. If you're running and you're Laura Lofi and running a special where you got to beat 4 from the other party, and you're whatever. I mean, Carl told me 100,000. I mean that's like nuts. But it was a very specific situation. Okay, that's different than a lot of others. But you can go to the register for school boards. City councils are different. Okay, but for school boards, you can go to Register Voters website and you can pull up their forms to show in past elections how much they raised. Well, look at how much they raised for people who won, and that will give you at least an That's That's not perfect. Because were they running 2 years ago when it was a presidential or not, you know, with different turnout lines? So every situation.
You can look up the past 6 years or so, so you can get an idea.
Amy wants to close, we're gonna close.
Alright.
Panel's gonna close.
Can I wanted to mention that, on this Saturday, David Burton has a meeting in El Cajon. Patriots is a good place to come and meet a lot of people involved in politics. Downtown Cafe, 182 East Main Street. And like, if you're thinking of running for office, it's a good place to go and use your elevator speech or get to practice it, because David lets everybody talk who wants to. And you pick up people to get up and talk and be able to actually experience a friendly crowd expecting what you're saying. And get used to getting up in front of a group and talking. It's a great place to meet.
One final question. Are they requiring, mandating the,
Second Saturday of every month, except for
In the city of San Diego, yes.
but not
They
in the
passed an
county?
ordinance saying if you want to be an elected
I know
official, yes, in
But
San
here
Diego.
too, like for the East County school boards?
No.
Okay.
Hopefully you'll fight that.
But if they're employees, it just depends on if the employees have to, right? For that district. Is that different for, because the board isn't necessarily an employee, right?
Yes, that's a discussion I have every now and again, so the board members are employed, like employees.
By the way, that's, the city of San Diego one is just waiting, is right for a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Because I told you what the qualifications are in the Constitution to run for office a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
I didn't see that one, but go ahead. Close it, stand up.
All right, well, so I asked you earlier to raise your hand if you are gonna run for office now, but how many of you would like to run for office one day? One day, come on, one day. Like it's a dream in your heart, desire in your heart.
It is.
Good, come on now. Lincoln? Yeah?
Lincoln, have you run before?
Todd, raise that hand. All right, well, first of all, I want to thank Ginny Merrifield. If you're watching, Ginny at home, thank you so much for doing all of this. And thank you guys for putting this all together. And I want to share something with you guys. And I haven't made the announcement formally in public.
Yeah, wait. Ginny said, take out your phones at the beginning, or take out our phones, we're all gonna
Hashtag. So, but I feel like we're like family here. I feel like I'm looking around this room and I know a lot of the people. And just really briefly, how many of you know that we got redistricted because every 10 years they do a census? All right, everybody knows that.
Megan knew it because she moved from La Mesa to El Cajon to outrun it even before it happened.
Well, I live in La Mesa, and I had been in Joel Anderson's supervisor district, okay? And never in a million years would I ever think that I would be in Nathan Fletcher's district. And, I did my part, and I called, for the redistricting meetings, and I was there for 4 hours on hold at my kitchen table, right? And then somebody said, I don't think there should be a supervisor district with City Heights in La Mesa. And I was holding my phone, and I said, Nathan Fletcher lives in City Heights. I live in La Mesa. I said, God, if you do that wacky map, I will run against Nathan Fletcher.
Yay.
Well, God did that wacky map. And I am now in Nathan Fletcher's district, and I just want to share with you guys, I'm running against Nathan
The official
That
announcement.
is my little catchphrase, yes. I did tell Nathan Fletcher. But you know what, I do want to share this part of it, because you are putting yourself out there, whatever there is, and oh my gosh, me running for supervisor, this is a total David versus Goliath thing.
Okay, she's got a primary election, so her deadline is not the July-August thing. Her deadline is February, March.
That's right. So I have to learn everything. So I will be going to candidate school. And actually, I have done candidate school before because it has been a desire of my heart. And I just want to encourage anybody, if it's a desire on your heart to run, Becky, run. There you go, that's it.
Obviously, Richard had to take off. So no closing statement from him. Watch for announcement from him in the morning. I anticipate we will see something from him.
Oh, that's exciting.
We'll see. And, I'm not gonna let it out here. Yeah.
We need to stand for Becky. I'm sorry, don't know her last name, who's running for school, the San Diego Unified School Board, and she's on our team, and she needs help.
Becca Williams.
And even if she gets on there,
Trustee
she can't take a lot of influence on the team. What I've said before is she can tell the rest of us the hell that's going on from that school board and keep us informed.
You said Becca Williams?
Becca Williams, trustee area
Becca
C.
Williams.
And I believe they do have a planner.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. So, Todd, you wanna just briefly on school choice?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Briefly.
I wasn't expecting this, but I've met most of you before. You probably know the story, school choice. I'm the California School Choice San Diego County Chair. We need to take our education back for our kids. We need to give parents the right to choose the best education. Go on bended knee to our legislature to do that. We need our kids to be educated with the right morals, ethics, and academics. School choice is how we're going to do it. We need to get it on the ballot. We need signatures to do that. We have petitions over here if anybody hasn't already signed. And if you would like to volunteer, because we need 1 million signatures and we need it by April, now is not the time to dither. If you really care about our kids, let's get out there and get some signatures. So let me know. I'd be happy to get you a pack. Get out there and get those signatures. So thank you very much.
Toward the end, you filled in as our panelist, whether you want to or not. So you guys look at it.
Thank you.
Well, there is a whole bunch of them.
Thank you for coming.
By the way, thank you for everybody being here. I wasn't sure, with everything that's going on out there, I wasn't sure if it was going to be a bus tonight. So this is a great turnout. Megan, thank you for
Yes,
everything.
Megan, thank you.
At home, thank you for everything you're doing. And everybody, if you need that phone number to text to, did everybody do that?
Yes.
Everybody needs it, we can give it to you again. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Find somebody else.
That was fun.